of you have been on this journey of trust with me. We've been talking about trust, a factor of intimacy with God. We've even talked about how to walk in trust with God. 4 practical tips that can help us practicalize what trust really is about. We've talked about Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. We've even talked about the life of David, how David loved God, David knew God, and David trusted God. But I really want to use walking in trust with the life of David as a case study this morning. What was it like when David was on the biggest scene of his life, when he was faced with that mean, ugly, hairy giant Goliath? What did trust look like for David? Was David superhuman? Was he not afraid? Was he in such confidence, trust in God, that nothing anyone around him could say could sway him? You know, you have to realize that everybody was afraid. That was the battleground. They had been afraid for 40 days. And so when David came on the scene, they told him what the king had promised, that if anybody could fight this Goliath, the king would let him marry his daughter. The king would even exempt his family for paying taxes. That seemed like a pretty sweet deal for anybody, but not enough for them to lay their lives down. As a matter of fact, there was a lot on the line. If you lost to this giant, the Israelites would be slaves to the Philistines. So there was so much that David had to carry on his young shoulders. As a matter of fact, the king even said, "David, are you really sure you want to do this? Are you sure you can take down this giant?" So I believe that there must have been a time that David might have been a little afraid. But you know what? Fear is a choice. Trust is also a choice. We can choose to stay in fear, or we can choose to walk in trust. I love one of the verses in Psalms that David wrote, Psalm 56 verse 1. He says, "When I'm afraid, I trust you. I just trust you. I just jump into trust." I remember going through these verses with my son, and I was trying to memorize them. And he said, "Mom, it doesn't say I will trust you. Psalm 56:1 just says, when I'm afraid, I trust you." Meaning that it's not a matter of my will. It's become second nature. And I believe that that's what David did. When everybody was afraid, and David almost got afraid, and Saul was like, "Can you really do this?" David said, "I'm just going to jump into trust." And how do you jump into trust? You remind yourself of everything good God has done up until that moment. And that's exactly what David did. He said, well, God has delivered the lion, God has delivered the bear into my hands, and this mean, ugly Philistine giant, he's not going to be any different. The same God who delivered those into my hands, he's going to deliver this giant into my hand. So he jumped into trust. As a matter of fact, when you look at Psalm 34 verse 1, it says, "But you, O Lord, are my God. I will trust in you." I'm telling you, the same thing happened again when I was still going through these verses with my son. My son said, "Mom, you know you're not fighting with God, right?" I said, "It's not for God. God knows that he's God. This declaration is for me." As a matter of fact, I'm sure David felt the same way too. That you, oh Lord, you are my God. I'm faced with this situation. But you know what? The situation isn't God. You are my God. Sometimes we need to brainwash ourselves and really let ourselves realize who is God in the middle of what we're going through. So I believe that was another way David was able to jump into trust instead of staying in fear. You know, remember when David got on the scene, he said to himself, "Who is this mean, hairy, uncircumcised Philistine giant that would defy the armies of the living God?" Another thing David did instead of staying in fear was he reminded himself of who God is. 2 Samuel 7:28 says, "But you, O God, are sovereign. Your covenants are trustworthy, and you've promised good to your servants." See, David reminded himself that I'm a covenant child of God. This giant, he doesn't have a covenant. I have a covenant but by blood. And you know what? We even have a better covenant, a covenant but by the blood of Jesus Christ. And that's exactly what we need to do, just like David. We need to remind ourselves of who is sovereign. It's not my boss who's bothering me. It's not my financial situation. It's not the crazy kids or the crazy husband or the crazy wife. Who is sovereign in your life right now? You've got to remind yourself just like David did. And so I'm trying to tell you that there are things you're going to go through in your life that I'm not saying that fear will never come up. I'm not going to say that David was superhuman, he didn't face fears. I'm not saying that we're going to be superhuman all the times and not face our fears. As a matter of fact, sometimes our loved ones want to tell us how grim the situation is because they're trying to empathize and sympathize with us. They remind us of how terrible the situation is. But you know what we need to do? Instead of letting our faith be contaminated, it, just like Saul was doing with David. David said, you know what, King Saul, don't even tell me that. God will deliver him into my hands. And that's where we need to be too. When our fear when our faith is about to get contaminated, that's when we need to just jump into trust and remind ourselves of the reality of our covenant keeping God. Remind yourself, scream at yourself the way I did with my son, and he said, you're not fighting God. I'm not fighting God, but I'm fighting my flesh. I'm fighting everything around me, everything that wants to tell me this is the situation and the situation is sovereign. I'm fighting to remind myself that God is who's sovereign, not my situation. God is the covenant-keeping God, not my situation. And so I believe that should encourage you and help you jump out of faith into trust. It's not about willpower. The more we do it, the more it becomes second nature, just like it was for David. So I pray that this blesses you. And once again, from the crew here at Marriage Bite, your lovely friends will love you. We're praying for you, and God bless you.